Experience Hero, Sirius XM channel 145. Make sure you hit me up on Instagram at Nick Hamilton LA, as well as on X at Nick Hamilton 213. Make sure you hit us up on YouTube at youtube.com/NH Experience TV. Subscribe right now. All right, y'all. We got a very special guest getting into some NBA action because we are in the home stretch of the regular season heading into the playoffs. And of course, I need this gentleman to break it all down for me. He is an NBA insider. He's also the host with Tim Thomas of No Nonsense podcast. He is the one and only, the culture expert himself, the man, the myth, the legend, Brandon Scoop B. Robinson. What's going on, sir?
Man, I'm cooling, staying out the way. Good to see you both. Jake, good to see you as well, my brother.
Same to you, my man.
My man.
Well, good to see you on American soil. You don't look like you running from anything, so that's great to see. Uh, definitely want to get into some, definitely want to get into some NBA action, man, because I know you to talk around town. I wanted to talk a little bit about just the final stretch of these NBA regular season. I know a lot of teams are tired; they're ready to get it on. We're seeing some slippage recently with the Los Angeles Clippers. I know Ty Lue spoke about their identity and basically called their identity soft, and not being able to reach their potential that like we saw early on in the season. What is your take on the Los Angeles Clippers, and can they rebound from this vortex of catching L's?
Well, he didn't basically call them soft. He said we're soft, and so I think he wants more of a Oreo cookie as opposed to a Chips Ahoy that crumbles when you put it in your hand. So, with that being said, I look at the Los Angeles Clippers. I mean, even to kind of formulate this team this year, you brought in James Harden without a training camp, without really much of a process, and they found a way to figure it out in a world where the Denver Nuggets are king. And, in my mind, have been pretty much consistent all season because people aren't paying attention in the same way that they would look at a Los Angeles Lakers or Clippers, or even when you look at the Eastern Conference, the Celtics, the Bucks, or what have you. Directly to your question, however, when you look at the Los Angeles Clippers, the fact remains that they still have the talent to compete. Just health has always been their or lack thereof has been the issue since they formulated this team with their crypto.com arena co-tenants, the Los Angeles Lakers. Say what you want about the bubble, the Lakers did get at least one championship when they created the partnership with LeBron, as well as Anthony Davis and more. But to keep the Clippers central, when I look at the Clippers and I look at the talent that they have on the court, there's no reason why that team should not be in the NBA's Eastern Conference Finals in the West, representing the West. And I think they have all the tools, but health will be the portion of it that if they don't get it done, they'll look back on it. And I think when you have a Harden who is a big man's dream with Ivica Zubac, and you look at Russell Westbrook, who to me I think was everything that John Wall was supposed to be when the Clippers brought him in. You look at Kawhi Leonard, you look at Paul George. Like, to me, this was always a put up or shut up year. You get the incentive of bringing in Harden, you got to bring it on home.
Absolutely. I mean, when you look at the NBA in the West, the conference state in the West, you mentioned the Lakers, as far as what they're doing right now, still in that play-in tournament seeding. But how far can this Laker team honestly get away from the glitz and the glamour and the LeBron isms? How far can this Laker team really go with the roster that they currently have?
I think when you look at the Lakers this year, there are parts of the schematics this year that remind me of them at this point last year. The issue is you've been without key guys that you brought in. To me, D'Angelo Russell, LeBron James, and Anthony Davis, say what you want about a midseason trade that never happened, it carried this team. Anthony Davis has been healthy most of the season. LeBron James has carried this team on his back, but I think there is such a thing of being the Lakers and not winning a championship. I think we've seen that in other organizations. You look at the New York Yankees; they're the Yankees. You're expected to win, but they don't. You look at the Dallas Cowboys; they're expected to win a Super Bowl, but they haven't. At some point, yeah, the Lakers are the Lakers. The Lakers organization has lived through the 90s of Nick Van Exel, Vlade Divac, Anthony Peeler, Sadell Three. of just I'm not comparing that Lakers organization in the 90s to now because again, within the last 4 or 5 years, the Lakers have won a championship. But it's okay if you don't win it. It's okay to just sell tickets. It's okay to just be a competitive franchise that may not bring it on home. Do I think that they have the talent on the floor to compete for a championship? Yes, but I think LeBron James and the Lakers are in a very similar situation that LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers were in maybe 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe 10 years ago, where the Warriors at that time were just better than that team. And I think you look at the Western Conference, the Nuggets are a cohesive unit. The Boston Celtics are on the rise. The Bucks, they have a chance to go deep as well. And you can't sleep on the Miami Heat as a team that just finds a way to get it done also. So I think the Lakers are a competitive team, but I think ultimately if they don't win, it's not all for naught because you're enjoying LeBron and towards the end of his career.
Indeed. Looking at OKC, the OKC Thunder, you know how gifted Shea Gilgeous-Alexander is in that young nucleus. Is OKC fool's gold?
No,
And why not?
because it's not just Gilgeous-Alexander that's leading that ship. It starts with coaching. Coach Mark is to me, they don't get the national spotlight because they're in Oklahoma. I said this on the show the other day. I spent about 10 days in Oklahoma last season, and I did two things. I got a lot of work done, and I got some of the best sleep while I was there. But the third option for me was actually watching competitive basketball even back then. I think this is so undersold in a world where we talk about Team USA basketball and the influence that USA basketball had for a lot of players going into the season. We talk about Alex Caruso. We talk about Brandon Ingram and some of those other guys. I think what doesn't enough light is not shown on this, and I think it should be, is how much Canadian basketball prepared a lot of Canadian players for this coming season. You look at Dylan Brooks of the Houston Rockets. You look at Shea Gilgeous-Alexander from Toronto. You look at Lou Dort, a teammate of Shea Gilgeous-Alexander in Oklahoma. To me, Canadian basketball got a head start on the NBA season in the same way, and it's carried over for MVP caliber season that Shea Gilgeous-Alexander is having. And I think spending time with those guys on that team last season and this season, I think that they've been energized. I spent some time with Shea in Orlando last month, and he talked to me about just how energized he is this season, and how he's really really enjoying the process of just being with his teammates and winning. It's not just Shea; it's Chet Holmgren, it's Lou Dort, as I mentioned before, it's Jalen Williams, and you look at certain teams like that are smaller market teams. They're not in the conversation, but I look at the Orlando Magic as a future team the same way. That's been playing well throughout the course of the season in a world where everybody's paying attention to everybody else. I think the Minnesota Timberwolves are in a similar conversation with the likes of Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert and Mike Conley Jr. So I really like the Thunder, and I like the fact that there are more teams out there than just the usual suspects like the Lakers, the Clippers, the Nuggets, the Celtics, etc.
You're checking out NBA insider and cultural expert Brandon Scoop B. Robinson here on the NH Experience. Now, I want to switch to the Eastern Conference because the league's best team, at least with the best record, are the Boston Celtics. Is this the year that Jason Tatum and company get it done and bring number 18 to Beantown?
I think they have a chance. I think they have as much of a chance as anybody else. I think what I can kind of illustrate this season in particular, and maybe even last season to a degree. We're currently in this March Madness phase where college basketball, 64 teams come in and do what they do. I look at the NBA at large, and I feel like it's very much like the NCAA tournament because you really don't know who will be the champions. And so I think the Celtics have just as much of a chance as anybody. As I'm illustrating that to you, for some reason, Forrest Gump comes to mind. That whole line, "Life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get next." I look at that situation with the Boston Celtics, and I think when you really look at what they did to get, Damian Lillard, or excuse me, when you look at the Bucks and what the Celtics and what everybody else did, but specifically when you look at the Celtics and they brought in Drew Holiday. Drew Holiday is in a situation where after the trade for Lillard, he comes into Boston and he has something to prove. Then you look at the fact that when we look at Boston and you look at the fact that they brought in Kristaps Porzingis. I spent a lot of time with him during his time in Washington, and at times he played a lot of great basketball in meaningless NBA minutes in our nation's capital, and that's because they're trying to figure a lot of things out in Washington. But Porzingis, to me, replaces Robert Williams in a way that Robert has not been healthy since probably around the finals, and so that kind of dodged the bullet there, if you ask me. Porzingis gives you more scoring than a Robert Williams will, but then you add to the puzzle. You know what the law firm of Tatum and Brown is going to bring you, but the both of them are earning their keep and doing what they need to do. The thing that's most surprising as we're winding down the season is Sam Hauser, who has put up stats, and it gives head coach Joe Mazzulla a way to kind of evaluate his talent and what he has going into the playoffs. So I like the Celtics. I like what they bring, but to just co-sign on they're going to win it all, I'd like to see it happen, but there's so much talent in the NBA's Eastern Conference. I'm not ready to just co-sign on it just yet.
And you talk about the talent in the Eastern Conference. I look at the New York Knicks. You mentioned the Miami Heat. But the Milwaukee Bucks, we all know they've been right there pretty much near the heels of the Boston Celtics all season long. We know how potent they can be, especially in playoff time. You talked about the addition of Damian Lillard, Dame Dollar coming to the Milwaukee Bucks, which to me was a great upgrade for them. But what does Giannis Antetokounmpo and Damian Lillard need to do to usurp the Boston Celtics, get to the NBA Finals, and ultimately win a chip?
I think it was the great philosopher Jada Kiss that said, "Y'all scared I could tell because I'm gonna get Bucks like Milwaukee. Because what? Because like Sam, I could sell." At the end of the day, when you look at the Milwaukee Bucks, the thing that helps them is the fact that they've had growth. I think bringing in Doc Rivers was smart because Adrian Griffin wasn't cutting it, and I think allowing players to just go out there and figure it out has been their advantage. I think the NBA season is a marathon, not a sprint. And I think that when you look at the Bucks and the fact that they have two All-Stars, the fact that they have an energy guy in Bobby Portis, the fact that you have just all of that, I think it was just time. I sat down with Milwaukee Bucks assistant coach Vin Baker at some point during the season, and he boldly said to me in our interview that he feels like Damian Lillard and Giannis Antetokounmpo are the modern day Kobe and Shaq. Those are large words, and I think that they're trying to make that happen. I mean, when you look at 2020, for example, Giannis was contemplating leaving, and I reported this back in 2020. I talked about how Giannis actually gave the Bucks ownership trust a list of different names of players that he'd like to be teammates with, and that list included James Harden, Chris Paul, and a few others. I can't remember all those names. That was 4 years ago. A lot has happened, but you look at where Harden ended up going, Philadelphia, then the Clippers, and you look at Chris Paul and how he's still useful in the NBA. And you're able to get Damian Lillard, who was so comfortably in Portland at that point when he gave that list, and then they go out and win a championship the following season, and he got that extension. So when you look at the Bucks, I think that they're in a good position, whether they win it this year or not. But I think they're in prime position to win it because I think they both have a lot to prove. Lillard wants to win a ring before it's all said and done. Doc Rivers gets a lot of criticism for his time with the Clippers and even with the Philadelphia 76ers. And I think with Giannis, a lot of his peers, there's like this mixed bag of, who is he? And I think he stays to himself. And I think there's a cultural disconnect sometimes, but I think ultimately having someone who was on his level in a Lillard and a supporting cast in that regard, I think that's a recipe for a championship. But they still got a playoff series, a large amount of playoff series to win before we talk about finals, and hopefully, something comes about.
Scoop, I have a question about not so much the playoffs, but what's going on in Toronto with Jonte Porter. What do you know what's going on with these gambling allegations and all these prop bets that are going on there?
Well, that wasn't my report, but from conversations that I've had with people, the thing that really stands out to me is just how much it reminds some people of Chris Webber, but the NBA edition.
Right.
The NBA is still investigating it, but what I can say in a wider scope is this: um, I've been asked about sports betting more recently. I just ended a 4-year run with a sports betting company, a global sports betting company, and I remember having a conversation with my mom, my late mom, and one of the things she said to me was, you got to be really careful when you're leading. Your words and what you say have influence, and when you're telling people this could happen or this might happen, people are believing you, and you may be feeding a habit. And at the time, I may not have seen it that way. And I kind of even adjusted my own personal brand and how I was delivering content and things of that sort, more focused on original content than the props and all that other stuff. But in a wider scope, taking that advice that my mom gave me and applying it to the subject at hand, um, how do you really know when somebody's milking it? How do you know when somebody's really going hard? How do you know when somebody's semi going, the distance? Like that's a slippery slope. And I think that this brings attention to a scope of things. Like you really saw the uptake of sports betting really take its course. I remember when we were all bored in the house and in the house bored during the height of the pandemic. And, having conversations with people about sports betting, as well as, investing stocks and real estate. Those were the three things that really stood out. And when I look at sports betting, like we're now in a different phase post height of pandemic, and those conversations about who's going to do this and who's going to do that, you got to really be careful with the sports betting thing, even when it comes down to how that aligns with alcoholism or other substance abuses and stuff like that. So I think in this case, I think the NBA is going to really look at it, but I also think we as a people have to really be careful in how much we spend and indulge in certain things, because it could be a greater problem. Like, I hope that answers your question.
Oh, it did. It did. Thank you.
Yeah, you know what? Two quick questions before I let you get on out of here, Scoop, because I know you're a busy man. We talked about popularity in the NBA. We talked about, what teams move the needle television wise, fan wise, and whatnot. And we all know how great of a team. We talked about the Boston Celtics, who are emerging. We talk about the Denver Nuggets, who seem to be the creme de la creme right now, especially defending champions. Are the Denver Nuggets the San Antonio Spurs of today, as far as interest, intrigue, popularity, so forth?
Well, I've always compared the San Antonio Spurs to oatmeal. It's boring, but it gets the job done. It's healthy. When you look at the Denver Nuggets, yeah, they fit that bill too. They play the half court. They have shooters for hire. They are a settled bunch of mix of young and old. While I looked at the topics of our conversation before we started, I really started thinking about that overnight when you sent me the questions or the topics at hand, I'm torn for this reason. While I can see your point of view of the Nuggets being the modern day Spurs, I think so too we could consider the Golden State Warriors for a similar but different reason. I had this conversation with Draymond, and he says he can see it. But the reason why I think it makes sense is because when you look at the Spurs, probably in the 2000s and even leading into the 2010s, the Spurs didn't do it every year. They may have done it every 2 years, every 3 years, but when you saw them, you felt them. And I think the Warriors did the same thing. And I think their NBA Finals win in 2022 kind of punctuated that even more, because you had a bunch of OGs that still were YMCA Saturday gym warriors, running those young guys out the gym that think they can do Iverson crossover and embarrass older guys. I think the Nuggets have to kind of appear more, and the Nuggets have to win a little bit more for us to just outright say that. And that's no disrespect to them. I like Coach Malone, and I like, I'm cool with some of the guys on that team, but I just think you need more Lowry salt, more adobo before we just take that piece of chicken out and say it's done. I think when you look at the Spurs and the Nuggets, I think that their big men both command. They set the tone for the half court set. I think if we're comparing Jokic to Duncan, cool. But I think that the Warriors more exemplify that because they're literally like that fifth cup of wine at the holiday party that sneaks up on you. You're like, how did that happen?
Damn. Well said. And talk to me about this brand new podcast that you have, No Nonsense Podcast, with yourself and former NBA player Tim Thomas. I like the mixture. I like the camaraderie that you guys. I watched the first episode with Stephon Marbury. I thought that was an excellent job. But what can the audience expect from you two, and what do you feel like you're bringing to the table that the audience may not have or may not be privy to?
No Nonsense with Tim Thomas and Scoop B. We started the first episode a couple weeks ago. Had Stephon Marbury, as you mentioned. We've been planning this since June of last year, and we started the first episode. And I think what's cool about it is we actually decided to go independent, and we actually were being chased by like two big networks, and we turned them down because we didn't like necessarily the format, but we wanted to kind of invest our own money and time into making a product that really stood out, and really we wanted to tell stories. And the cool thing about our situation is, Tim and I both came in '97 to the NBA. He was drafted in '97. That draft included Tim Duncan, included Keith Van Horn, Chauncey Billups, Tracy McGrady. And then I started my radio career with the New Jersey Nets in '97. And so we crossed paths. He ultimately was a Sixer when he first came into the league. And I'd see him around the locker room and more. And then our ties to just the state of New Jersey, as well as in New York City, and just who we know and who knows us. Stephon Marbury being the first, guest on the show was pretty significant because Stephon and Tim were teammates as members of the New York Knicks. And I got to know Stephon when he was a Net, when he was traded for Sam Cassell. And, we're, aside from him being a Net, we have family ties. His cousin is my cousin. So we have a lot of similarities and connections there. And we're just having fun. Next episode drops tomorrow. And so I'm excited for that. And that's it.